The January Executive Committee meeting. It's 3 p.m. I'm calling the meeting to order. It's 3:01, actually. I'll start with reading the appeal statement. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, please take notice that decisions of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County Community Oversight Board may be appealed to the Chancery Court of Davidson County for review under a common law writ of cert. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days after entry of the final decision by the board. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to ensure that time and procedural requirements are met. With that, I'm going to do roll call here. I know Mr. Sweeney said he wasn't going to attend. Ms. Ross, you're on.
Present.
Thank you. And Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Sweeney, can you do the electronic meeting statement? Oh, sorry, Mr. Pinkley.
Absolutely. So under Governor Lee's most current executive order number 71, the in-person quorum requirements for for meetings has been suspended in light of the COVID pandemic. So in order to meet today, we just need to have a motion, second, and affirmative vote that we're meeting electronically to conduct essential business and to protect the safety and welfare of Tennesseans.
Thank you, Mr. Pinkley. Is there a motion?
I make the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Ross.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell-Gooch. Any focused discussion? Don't think so. I'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell-Gooch?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Let's move to the approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any edits to make to those? If not, can take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. I'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Ross?
Aye. Approved.
Mr. Campbell-Gooch?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Okay, let's get started in the other part of the agenda here. I just wanted to give an update or tell you why I chose to write the letter to Chief Drake last week regarding the Capitol riots. And there were stories coming up about police departments across the country who were putting officers on administrative leave for their having participated in the riots at the Capitol. I didn't want us to be in a situation where we find out after the fact that MNPD had been investigating someone for having attended. Too often, we're kind of behind. We're always playing catch up. So I wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be playing catch up this time and that we were going to be aware of any investigation that was going on, if it was going on at the time. I'm thankful that there isn't any investigation ongoing. Chief Drake replied to my letter the next day and indicated that, and everything seems to have gone well today. I don't think there have been any incidents across the country, so we're thankful for that. And if you had any questions about the letter, I'm happy to answer them. Any comments? Ms. Ross, Mr. Campbell-Gooch, sorry.
I was just curious if we were able to confirm in any type of way that there's no MNPD officers that are being investigated for their participation in the insurrection.
Yes, Chief Drake confirmed it the next day. I don't know if the reply letter went out to the board, but we did post it on our social media. I know that.
I read the letter, and I guess I was talking about like anybody outside of Chief Drake.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, any other official channels? I mean, I don't know who else would be able to confirm that because I mean, like you said, we are constantly playing. We're constantly playing catch up and getting information secondhand. So I'm just curious if we had any sources that were able to confirm that there are actually no investigations going on. Investigations.
No, he's the only person that I can think of that we could contact. I know Mr. Lara is on the line, but I don't want to put him on the spot if he is unable to answer the question. But yeah, I think that Chief Drake is the only one who we can ask at the moment because they would be the ones conducting the investigation. Ms. Ross?
Yes, I was curious as to why you had written a letter when I first received it. I'm glad you clarified that. I'm just a little bit disturbed in terms of we have a new police chief. I know there was some distrust with the old police chief, but I don't know. Well, I think that we have to learn to begin to trust the police chief and give him his due respect.
You're right, Ms. Ross. And I think that we do respect him, and we are immensely grateful of the position that we are in right now, as opposed to last year, as opposed to the beginning, as opposed to last year, and when we began with a different police chief. We've done a lot more, we've accomplished a lot more, and we have a much better relationship. So you're right, we do have to continue making sure that we have that relationship with Chief Drake and make sure it's a good relationship. But at the same time, I know that we need to make sure that we are an independent body, because I've also heard from other board members about, making sure that we are differentiating ourselves, that we are not, necessarily on the same team. We're different city agencies tasked with different things. But you're right. We need to be making sure that we have a good relationship with them. Any other question? If not, Executive Director Fitchard can give us an update on the license plate reader bills.
Hello, good afternoon. So in December, we had our board meeting. I think it was December the 16th. And then on December the 17th, I was invited by the public safety chairperson, which is Councilmember Jennifer Gamble, to sit on the panel, which they were having some community meetings. She had 3 community meetings scheduled. And so that was the first one. And I sat on that panel along with several other people, Chief Drake, Dr. Daniel from Vanderbilt. I also believe that Brandon Tucker from the ACLU, he may or may not have been on that particular panel, but there were some community members on that panel as well. And on that particular panel in December, after we had our board meeting, my main focus for that meeting when we're talking about LPRs was to discuss, some of the issues that I thought were community oriented, which some of the things that I brought to the discussion was basically things that were concerning to me, like how would the information be stored? How would it be used? Who would it be shared with? What was the retention policy? Give us more information about the hot list and how that worked. And so I brought all those questions. Those particular meetings were recorded and are on the Metro Government's Nashville's YouTube page if anyone is interested in looking at them. The next meetings that they had were in January. In January, those two bills that were being proposed were put on hold. They were deferred until February. There was two meetings in January. There were two meetings in January. One that had the panelists on there, which was the public defender, the district attorney, the ACLU, the Human Rights Commission, and then some neighborhood and community members as well. And so I think that they did a really good job at trying to bring everyone to the table, the stakeholders that this would really affect, that would bring them to the table to discuss, what the issues were with license plate readers. And there was a lot of discussion around that from council members, from community members, as well as from city leadership. So that's all I really have to say about that. They've been deferred until February, the first meeting in February. And I think it's during that time in February that they will gathered all of the information that we discussed between December and January, compile that some kind of way, and then have some really good insight into whether the license plate readers is a good move for Nashville.
Thank you, Director Finchard. And I'll also say that I've been following it closely along with Director Finchard. I too have spoken with the ACLU just to, get their take on it as well. I think it's a good opportunity for us to partner them. And I'll also say that while there have been, these community listening sessions or discussions over the past month, it hasn't been something that I think is enough to reach out to the whole community. They are on WebEx, and that's not always the easiest platform to navigate. And just during the pandemic, this authentic community engagement is really not possible. And this is something that I think really needs to be vetted by the community before going any further. So I'm glad it's been deferred. Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
A point of clarification. I know that there were 3 bills. I know that there were 2 on first readings and then 1 on a second reading. Have all 3 of them been deferred, or just which 2 have?
I believe the one, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Councilmember Stiles' bill is going to be worked into another bill, Director Finchard. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not real clear on that. I know that they deferred 2 of the bills, the one by Stiles and the one by Johnston to February, I think it's February the 5th. February the 2nd is when that meeting is. And the other bill, the third bill, I think was the bill that was by Rosenberg. And I think that what you're thinking of, Chair Martinez, is that they were going to do something with with Rosenberg's bill as it pertained to Stiles' bill, and maybe combine that some kind of way. But I'm not real clear on that yet, so I don't want to really speak on that. I just know that the 2 bills that were written, the way that they were written, were deferred until December. I'm sorry, I keep saying December. Sorry, February the 2nd.
Thank you, Director Finchard. Does that answer your question, Mr. Campbell-Gooch?
Yeah, yes, it does.
Thank you. Ms. Ross?
Director Fisher, were you able to talk with Council Lady Gamble about the cameras or readers that's already in her district, that's been in her district for 5 years? It seems like nobody knows that or is acknowledging that. They're controlled out of Madison Precinct. They were put in several years ago. They had one officer that monitored them on a regular basis. But has anything come up in terms of I know they haven't been monitored maybe in the last 3 or 4 years, but has anybody said anything about the ones that's up already that's been up for years?
That's a good question, Ms. Ross. No, I haven't been able to speak to Councilmember Gamble about that as of yet, but I will, because I was unaware that there was any cameras in her district. I don't know if they are readers or cameras, but I can ask her that and get back with you and have an answer for you at our board meeting.
Okay, because I've seen personal knowledge of it. I've even seen, been out to the precinct and saw the officer that monitored them on a regular basis. And like I said, they have not been monitored in years. So I'm just concerned if we had the pilot program already, and what's the data behind why they would stop using them?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. I'll get back with you. I'll get with her, and then I'll get back and have an answer for you at our next board meeting next week.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
Yeah, I also am curious about, I think in 2017, if I remember correctly, there was legislation prohibiting the use of license plate readers, both on police cars and right-of-ways. So I would also, because I think Rosenberg's bill changes the language of that original ordinance or bill that passed in 2017. Excuse me if I'm like messing up the language, but yeah, I would also be curious about that and how that plays into all of this as well.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I know that that's exactly what his bill was referring to, changing the language so that they would be able to incorporate using LPRs within a limited scope. So I'll get some more clarity on that so that I can have that information for you at the board meeting.
Dr. Villier, did you have something to add there?
The current Metro Code only prohibits license plate readers that are installed on the public right-of-way, so on the road. They don't restrict mobile license plate readers on police cars. Councilman Rosenberg's bill would clarify that, but in the actual code text, the license plate readers are only prohibited when they're installed in a fixed location.
Thank you, Dr. Lear. Ms. Ross.
Did they say where they were going to install? Did they talk about installation? I know when they installed the last ones, NES put them up. So was there any kind of conversation about that?
I don't think that there was. And then I think that the response to that is, well, first they would have to even acquire the cameras, so that we would be a long ways away from that unless they go the route of wanting to pilot the cameras in certain areas. But I don't think that they mentioned any specific place that they wanted to put them. Is that right, Director Pitcher?
That's correct. For Councilmember Stiles' bills, what she proposed was that they would be on mobile trailers, and they would have them in multiple areas where they had what she said was high, I guess, activity for drag racing. And then if for instance, if it was in a particular area, in that area, the drag racing kind of fizzled out, they would be able to move that particular license plate reader that was on a trailer, they could move it to another location. And so that kind of goes back to what Dr. Villier just said, that only those that are fixed were prohibited. This is to kind of piggyback on what Mr. Gooch said. So license plate readers that are on a trailer or on something that's movable or in a police car, those were not prohibited. So We don't know for certain. So to answer the question, Mrs. Ross's question, we don't know 100% sure where those mobile trailers were going to be located. But she said it would be in multiple locations across the city.
Thank you, Director Pitchard. And I'm curious if the other members of the executive committee have any thoughts on how to proceed. I don't know if we've ever, as a board, taken an official position on a piece of legislation. So I'd be interested to hear if you think that we should, support it or oppose it and, come out and say that, or if we should just continue, providing information to the community about the potential effects of having these license plate readers in Nashville. Ms. Ross.
I think that we should continue to educate the community, but also get a response from the community. Maybe we could take a poll through the computer system since we can't have a meeting. But I think we should listen to the community as well as take it back to our full board to see their thoughts on it.
Okay. Mr. Kamelgridge.
I'm in a similar place. I submit to a people's process, especially through like dialogue and like consensus building. I would also like to say, since we cannot be together, there's also like a digital divide happening here too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's already going to be a group of folks that are probably living within very close proximity of where they're going to put these cameras up that are not like online or in a tech space. So like I think we also should struggle through that as a board because I see us as like a facilitator of information.
Yes, that's a good point. And it again raises the question is, what type of community engagement can we do during a pandemic? And if we can't, really ask the community about how they feel about this issue right now, then perhaps we should advocate that they wait until we're at a time where we can really actively engage the community. Director Fitchard.
Yeah, I think these are great points because, even though we had the meetings, the public safety meetings with that Councilmember Gamble hosted, there was still some limitation on, who and how the community were engaged. For instance, it wasn't as if the community members could call in and voice their opinions. They basically were kind of in a little vacuum, and they could post their questions, but even those questions weren't read at the time of the meeting. So I think that, to have true community engagement, there has to be an opportunity for the people of the community to voice their opinions and ask the questions, especially if these readers are going to be going up in neighborhoods where, we find people who are disenfranchised already and marginalized. So I think that if we can help facilitate that, that would be fine. But I also think that, because this is something that the council has spoken of having these meetings, that they should also, make certain that the meetings that they have, the outreach is really reaching the people that might be affected the most.
Thank you, Director Fitchard. Mr. Kamelgridge, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just a couple things. I think I'm thinking through how we can creatively get to folks. I do think, like you said, there definitely needs to be a slowdown here. We were already behind the ball when we were looped in anyway, which is weird. But also, I'm like thinking about what would it look like to connect with groups like Community Oversight Now to see if they can both engage with their base, but also talk to their folks about like what would be the best way to creatively get community input, and then like allow that to both inform our decisions and decide where we move forward. Because I mean, this kind of just came out of the blue, I think, for us and people here. So yeah, I'm just curious on what that would look like to engage with groups that are plugged in on the ground.
You're right. I think that's a really great point. And it's something that we could do very easily, reach out to these organizations and get them to, you know, give us their take on the legislation based on what they're hearing in the community, if they're hearing anything. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that's something that we should do, since we can easily do that. Anything else on the license plate readers for now? You know, we can discuss it more at the board meeting next week. If not, I think I'll hand it over to Mr. Pinkley for, actually, just quick, if you're not on the Bylaws and Rules Committee, I wanted to make sure that if you have any additions or if you have any additions to make to the bylaws or rules or corrections or anything like that, to make sure that you get those to Director Fitchard so that the Bylaws and Rules Committee can take those up when they are looking at the bylaws and rules next week. And now I'll hand it to Mr. Pinkley for the board vacancy update.
And just as a follow-up for the Bylaws and Rules Committee meeting, that is scheduled for Monday at 4. The invites for that haven't gone out yet. I didn't want to inundate everybody with a bunch of WebEx invites since we're having 3 meetings in about 7 days. So that'll go out this afternoon as soon as we're done here today. And then for the board vacancy update, the vacancy announcement is now up on the COB's webpage. That's at the Metro website. The dates that they have listed on that page are February 2nd, which is the deadline for nominations, and then February 9th, which is the deadline for nominee info to be submitted. And then tentatively, February 16th is when those nominees would appear before the Rules and Confirmation Committee. And February 16th would also be the date of the elections. Those dates are tentative and may change depending on the amount of response that we get for the vacancy announcements. And then just as a separate matter, since Mr. Sweeney has already indicated that he is not looking to run again, and then Ms. Ross, I don't know her plans, but if she is reelected, then we won't have to worry about that. But Mr. Sweeney's position with the executive committee will end before his actual term will end. And so under the bylaws, Article 7, Section 4, the chair has the ability to appoint a replacement. So at the full board meeting next week, we may want to see who is interested in filling that position when Mr. Sweeney's term ends.
Thank you, Mr. Pinkley. Any questions about that? I know it's something that we can take up next week. And it's something that we can clarify in the Rules Committee too, or in the Bylaws Committee. Is that correct? Because I know it's a little, well, the only option is for the chair to appoint someone. So maybe we can add in something else in the bylaws to have an alternative way of appointing someone to fill that role.
Absolutely, we can always bring that up. Just as the bylaws are currently written, the chair is the appointer, but as you said, we can always bring that up at the meeting on Monday.
Okay. Any questions on that? If not, I'll hand it over to Dr. Villier for the annual report.
All right, thank you. Ms. Orozco, Ms. Thompson, and I have been working over the past several weeks in order to prepare the COB annual report, which is due to the state legislature on February 1st. You should have received last night a rough draft of that report. And we're looking for feedback from the executive committee before it's sent to the entire board as a draft. We're planning on sending a revised version with some formatting changes with the board documents later this week. So if you have any feedback now, we're happy to discuss that. If you want to take a longer look and make notes and send those to me, we would definitely appreciate any feedback that you have on the annual report.
Thank you, Dr. Villier, and thanks for your work on that. Ms. Ross?
I basically thought the annual report looked very good. I would like to maybe see the wording changed. And I went off and left at my job when I came home to get on this call. But around 2020 and Mr. Martinez's statement, if you can look at those two paragraphs around 2020 and maybe make that a little bit more smoother. And there was one other thing within the draft that I'll have to get back with you. But basically, I read it and it looks pretty good. Some formulation, little formulation changes too, but basically it looks good.
Thank you. Yeah, please, if you have a chance, send me an email when you think of what that was, or feel free to give me a call, and we're happy to make some changes.
Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
Just wanted to echo what Board Member Ross said. This looks great. I learned so much and thought about and was reminded of how much good and principled work we've been doing for what seems like a very, very long time. My favorite piece of this entire thing is the map on page 20, where you can see it's like a heat map for complaints against police officers or just like law enforcement, which I think this is fire, and then also gives us our direction on what we can do outreach. Also, what that map makes me curious about, and I don't know if I just overlooked it, is what types of complaints are happening in these areas. And that, I don't think that has to do with any of the reports. That's just where my mind went. But as far as the report, I wouldn't change anything. I think it's amazing.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell-Gooch. And I think you had asked for a map earlier on, and I think that's a good point, and we're working to incorporate that on a monthly basis going forward.
Do you have another comment, Mr. Campbell-Gooch? No. All right. If there's nothing else on that, we can move on to new business announcements if you have any. Director Fitchard.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone that on this Friday at 3 o'clock, I will be partaking with 4 other people for this after action review meeting regarding the Christmas bombing. That meeting is going to have myself, Deputy Chief Green, Attorney Ed Yarbrough, Councilwoman Jennifer Gamble, and Kathy Moranti. And so we will meet, I guess this will be our first meeting, I'm assuming, and it will be Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock.
Thank you, Director Fitchard. Anything else there? And if not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Ms. Ross.
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell-Gooch. Any focused discussion? There's none. do a roll call vote. Ms. Ross?
Aye.
And Mr. Campbell Gooch?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to each other next week.
Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.